Hello. So here's a little bit of a recap of what we did with Jett today. So this is the start of working on his center command where he sits in between your legs. It's a little awkward teaching this. Not gonna lie. Essentially, you grab a couple treats in your hand. You stand in front of Jett. I like to do a little bit wider stance. He goes in between your legs. He gets rewarded. Sometimes you have to lure the dog through with that treat. Now, right here, I'm getting him to sit. He sometimes gets a little confused and lays down, but the idea is that he has to sit. And then after a momentary pause, then I use an OK command, and he goes through or backs up behind you and goes around that right leg. So the idea is that he doesn't go through and moving forward. He essentially dismount him essentially. But right here, see how he's sitting? Eventually, as he gets more comfortable going in between your legs and sitting, then you can start standing in a normal pace where you're not hunched over, kind of weird. Um, it's weird to explain, especially over video. But essentially what you can practice this weekend is having him sit between your legs, using a treat to lure him through, and then after a momentary pause, then OK is his dismount or his release command that he can move from that spot. Eventually you can have it to be where you're checking out at a farmer's market or you're at a shopping mart and you ask him for center and he stays there until you release him, whether you're walking or moving. Right now we're just teaching the basic position. Right here I was messing with a reverse center position, so this could be like a watch 6. I have a lot of clients that like their back being watched, because you can tell by the dog's body language if someone comes up to behind you. So it's kind of the reverse version of that. Now, I also was messing with him on a spin command, so whether it was a left turn or a right turn. Ideally, this is the start of an orbit command, but right now I just want him to teach kind of the body mechanics of can you go around yourself, can you go around me, and then reinforcing touch. Touch is going to be our alert for the oregano. So right now I'm just reinforcing that, hey, flat hand, he nose bumps you. Boop, right there, and he gets a little retreat or reward. Now, right now I use it as a redirection tool, especially when he throws a little bit of teenage attitude. But we'll define that a little bit later on. Now, when you ask for a center and he doesn't get it, you just kind of hear like the wind blowing through his ears. That's where I just mark it with a negative marker of and try again. Anytime that, especially as we're learning new things, it's reset, reset. Yes, good boy. Now, he does get a little over anxious or a little overexcited jumping for that treat. So I'd say caution with your fingers when you practice this. When I have gentlemen do this, I had caution them, hey, the dog's going to go through your legs. Just be careful how wide or low you stand. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Now this is where I was working on going around an object. So I have some cones that make it pretty handy, but this is where you can have them go around a chair. If you have a selfie stick, if you have a plant, it doesn't matter what it is. The idea is that it's not just him that he spins around, but it's also an object. So right here I used his body for a spin. Now we can call this, clockwise is a spin, counterclockwise is an around. We can also just say left spin, right spin. We can label it whatever you would like. But the idea is when we teach body mechanics like this, we always want to teach both left and right sides. Dogs tend to get stuck doing one side when we teach new behaviors. So you'll see in a little bit where he gets stuck not turning around. So something to think about when you guys practice this. Practicing where he spins around his own body and then practicing where he spins around an object. Eventually it'll be you that he'll spin around, but he has to understand the concept first. So right here you can see where he's struggling. I'm going to reset and then go off to something else. With Jett, I would say, do it 5-10 times at most and then go off and do something else. Ideally 5 to 6 times. Now, I'm not going to have you do this part, but I wanted to include it so you can start seeing. So this is where I'm going to start teaching him to check it. Check it will be his command or cue for checking your food for the oregano. Right now I just have treats in there, so I want to encourage the sniffing for him. This is a pretty rough variation of a scent game. Because ideally if there's a treat in there, what I want him to do is nose bump me and then he gets to have the treat. And if there's not anything in there, he's going to sit or lay down for it. So right there, he sat, it was a negative. He's going to try it again. He gets a little distracted. I ask him again for it. It's not in there. And I was like, all right, well, let's check this one. He sniffs, sniffs, sniffs. Now, Jett, when he does smell something that he wants in there, he tries to paw at it and tug at it. So what I want him to do is realize that he needs to nose bump, like there. I don't want you to practice this at home, just because I want to clean a few things first, so that way there's a little bit more consistency. And I'll definitely have you practice it next week, but you can kind of see a sneak peek of what's coming up. I also will have for lack of a term, a special container that you'll practice with him, to identify the oregano, and that when he smells oregano, it's a nose bump, as an alert. If you want a different alert command, so whether he throws a paw, or he lays down, we can definitely shape that instead. But a nose bump is like you'd have him sniff a wine glass, or you have him sniff a jar of oregano, or like pasta sauce, and then he'd just nose bump your hand or your thigh to give you a heads up of, hey, no, this is the thing that has what you're not supposed to have in it. But again, it's kind of a nice little sneak peek of what we're working on. Good boy. Yes. Okay, Jett, check it. Check it. Check it. Is it in here? Is it this one? Check it. Jett. Jett. Hey. Touch. Jett. Touch. Yes. And then here is a little preview of our public access testing that we did. Since he loves Home Depot, usually that's one of my go-tos, I decided to mix things up and go to Odyssey Aquarium. Now, I know Sam has taken him a couple times to Odyssey since it's just down the street from us. But I haven't taken him myself. So I wanted just to see how he would do with all the distractions and structures and stuff like that. What we'll probably do next is probably a Target, maybe a Ross or a TJ Maxx, as we build up behaviors. And then once he's ready, we'll probably do some Scottsdale Fashion Square or Kierland Commons. Fashion Square is a really good example of airport practice. Because it's so loud and echoey, but it's also kind of our final environment that I like to test public access testing on. Now you'll notice that Jett is on essentially like a belt leash. I'm not really giving him a ton of corrections via the leash. I'm wanting him to come and stand right next to my hip. Now I am giving him leash correction, so I give a little bump on the leash, or I call his name and then reward. Sorry, I had to fix his leash right there for a second. Or especially when we saw a bunch of school kids coming off buses, he got a little overexcited, so I had to grab that leash just to give him what I like to call micro corrections, where it's like a little bunch of little, hey, focus, yes, good boy. He's the sweetest little squirrel that there ever was. He sees something he really likes. He doesn't pull, he doesn't tug on it too difficult, he doesn't bark for it, but he does just, he's a little tenacious of like, but I want to check it out. So that's where those micro corrections come into play. You can also do turns like this where you have him go around you, and when he sits right next to your hip, that's where reward. Now, I think I sent you the picture of the polar bear. If I haven't, I'll make sure I do it again. Statues of animals or lifelike things can definitely freak out dogs, and especially with his weird barking behavior that he has shown. Start exploring or inviting him to check things out that would normally trigger him. One of the things that was really fascinating on this trip is that I did let him say hi on a commanded say hello greeting, and he was really excited to meet some females. But then he got really nervous with a couple older gentlemen that we passed that were working in this complex. We were able to overcome it where he got a treat, he got to sniff, and then we went back into a sit command. You'll actually see it in just a little bit. But this might be an interesting trigger that we can work on.